Yeah, I want to go back to Wyoming. I was looking, because I'm sitting on 1 point, and I was looking at the draw yesterday on Go Hunt, and I'm like, I don't have a tag yet. I should draw a rifle tag in Colorado, a first season rifle tag for elk. And that's our busy season, so I can only usually do 1 or 2 tags. So I'm like trying to figure out what I need to do. It's like, that's going to come out the last day of the month, and it's going to be the Wyoming deadline that same day, and then it's California, Idaho, Arizona. I have a decent amount of Arizona points, so I was like, I can do a late coos deer hunt. But
yeah, I've got points in Arizona. I'm trying to decide. My challenge with any of the point games is that I've been in it for 15 years, give or take, depending upon the state, but 13, 15, I have either 13 to 15 points wherever I go. And it's hard to like look at it. If you really look at the numbers, I'm like, is it worth it going back in?
That's what,
that's for a lot of species, pronghorn, because you'll likely be able to get access, but it's just you're seeing so many more people mobile with hunting now.
Yeah, and I'm sitting at about 10 points in all those states, and so I'm same thing. It's like, well, now do I draw a tag that I could maybe draw again, or do I just wait it out and just draw one super good tag? But it's like, what do you do? Stop hunting?
Yeah,
like you know. Or do you say so? It's I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer. I don't know if I could ever not have the ability just to be like, okay, I'm going to draw, or at least try to draw a tag in some state. It scares me not to have the points. Yeah. When I know other people are getting them.
Right.
So.
And it's that kind of a FOMO mentality of like, oh, I got to get points, or to try and build it up. I mean, it's. Over-the-counter tags are certainly going to get tougher and tougher.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed this year, so I started to keep running some numbers in California, is that we're actually seeing increases in some non-resident tag numbers.
Oh, really?
More and more people are, because
that would not surprise me.
I think what's going to happen is that people are, they're going to look for those over-the-counter opportunities that I can do every year.
Or one of the last states of true over-the-counters.
And not only that, you can come here, you can get 2 deer tags and a bear tag.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of opportunity in your pocket. I'll leave it at
correct.
Yeah. We could go off into the weeds, but it is. There is opportunity, and I think for the people that can't get the tags, they're gonna. And I hope they do. I hope they do, because I think that adds to the challenges of hunting in California. I think for sure. I think that if we bring more non-residents in, and it's not going to be a massive windfall.
Yeah.
We're not going to sell tens of thousands of non-resident tags, but there could be something there. So
definitely true. Well, I'd like to officially start this episode. We'll say welcome back to Save for the Blind podcast presented by Tetra Hearing. So on my left, I have my co-host Jeff Smith, and across the table we have JR Young, I would say California draw statistician extraordinaire, as well as he is on the board of directors for the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. So welcome to the podcast, JR.
Thank you.
We're just going to dive right into it. This podcast is going to be all about mostly California big game. We may get in the weeds with some other states depending on time and where the conversations take us. But if you could take us through, let's start with the basics of the California draw. Let's just start with a point, how the draw is processed in tags. So if somebody were to come to you and say, hey, JR, how do I get a big game tag? Where do we start from there?
The start and the easiest point of it is that for much of the state, you can just go and buy a deer tag. Our bigger units that if people are familiar with, you have A zone, which is the Central Coast west of I-5. You've got B zone, which is the North Coast east of I-5 or west of I-5. Sorry. And then you got a few zones in the Sierra, so you can get those tags anytime that you want. And you can just go into your local sporting goods store and you can buy it, or you can go online and buy it as long as you have a Go ID number. You've got your account within the state. When I think most people are probably at that point if they haven't ever bought any type of hunting license, or if they bought any type of hunting license within the state. And then from there, that's the lowest hurdle. The next step is...
we would consider those tags, quote unquote, over the counter.
Over the counter.
When you hear people talk about over the counter tags.
Yeah. So people that aren't familiar, you may hear us say OTC. That's just an over the counter tag. like I said, go into any store, buy it, and monitor the season dates and go hunt. And figure out, where regionally you're going to be. We have some very, very big regions in those areas. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres within those over-the-counter options. That said, it's over-the-counter, which means everybody can do it. So there's going to be lots of people. There's going to be a lot of people out in the woods during that time. The next level up, I guess, is to think about the units that are getting in and getting points. So a lot of people say, well, how do I get a point? What do I do to get a point? Well, and really what a point is a point structure. This is common all across the West outside of Idaho and New Mexico, is that you get points, and points can either be preference, which means the people with the most points get the tags, or it can be bonus. And bonus is a structure of like, you have 1 point, you get one raffle ticket, one time your name's in the hat. You get 2 points, and some states do some, it's not trickery, but
Nevada is squaring your points.
They square them. So if you have 2, you actually have 4.
Yep.
And then when you have 3, you have 9. But more tickets in the hat. And so all of them, just from a statistical perspective, just change your odds. Mm-hmm. In California, we have what's called a modified preference point system. So if you select a hunt in California, say there's 100 tags, those tags are split 90% to preference. So 90% of those tags, or 90 in the case of 100 tags, go to the people with the most points that have applied. And that can change. And then the remaining 10% is what's called draw by choice, or you'll hear people say the random. And that's really what it is. It means then they look at the whole pool of applicants for a given hunt, and they pick out 10 names out of that, because that's that 10% reserved for. And so there's 10 people that can randomly pick up that tag. So in California, the way that it's structured, you always have a chance. Yeah. There's always a chance to draw. You have to look into each hunt, and we can go real deep into the weeds here. You have to look at the hunts and figure out how many people are in there. If there's, you look at one of our most popular hunts, like a G3 or G37. These are the general tags. They're late season tags. They're highly coveted. You might have 4,000 applicants in there. If you look at like G3 has 25 total tags, which means 23 go to the preference point people. And then there's 2 tags left over for that random draw. Could be 4,000 people that you're competing against, so your odds get real long, real quick. So that's kind of the general structure. We have dozens of tags that you can apply for, and they all take some sort of different point level. Mm-hmm. And it just depends on. It's really just a supply and demand issue. That's our structure for hunting tags and everywhere, right? You have so many tags that you can give out, but you've got 10 times as many people that want to apply for it. So states have created some sort of structure, and California's created this modified preference point system structure to give everybody an opportunity. And since we have a preference structure, that preference goes to those who've been putting in the longest. We implemented this system in 2002. And so now the points grow each year of what the potential maximum point is. And currently it's 20. It was 21 last year. It'll be 22.
Yeah, so 22 after this year.
22 points this year. For the people that are putting in for 22 years and not drawn a tag, they have 22 points. And I'll get into some of these numbers of kind of what happens over the life cycle. That's what I've been looking at a lot this year, is to, what's going on with the people that have been doing this for 10 years, at least 10 years, and have more than 10 points. Like, where are they? What are they doing?
Yeah.
I did a lot of...
He falls in that category.
Yeah. How many points do you have?
16.
Okay.
So kind of no man's land. No, 17 this year.
17. So you're in no man's land.
For everything or just for deer?
Just for deer. I think I have like 12 or 13 for elk.
Okay.
You're way behind on that.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm never going to get it anyway.
Yeah. Elk, pronghorn, and sheep are kind of a different bucket. So I always kind of break this down by 2. Mm-hmm. Or, whether it's deer. The deer draw is very different than the others.
Yeah.
It's that supply and demand. It's
numbers
numbers. The supply is very low. The demand is very high. So what have you been putting in for? Point only? If you want to share, you don't have to share.
It was what's the G3 hunt? Just to hopefully
Good
get it
ale.
on the random. Yeah. And then this year we're just doing the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
You just haven't had it. He hasn't had the big game hunting bug as long as I've had it.
No.
So you didn't spend your points when you were younger because you didn't have anything to go after.
No, and it was basically we grew up in X4 area, so when it first was implemented, we weren't really into big game hunting, so we started behind, and then with life we're just putting in, not drawing, and I'll do this tag over here, not really looking at statistics or any of that, and then here you are 17 years later. Yeah. So.
And that's that's really kind of why I started to do this. You started looking at numbers. I'm like, I don't know what's in people's minds or whatever when they draw. You never know that, but you kind of try and figure out what's actually happening. And certainly a system gets implemented, and then there might be a slow uptake on people trying to understand it. So I think I started this in 2020 during COVID because what are we doing but sitting around doing nothing?
Yeah.
So I'm just opening spreadsheets and starting to go through stuff, and I started to see some anomalies in the numbers of just people putting in for group applications, and the one that always stepped out at me, and I think what happened is that they're gone, but it was literally just one case that baffled me. Was that there was always an application for Goodale. That's the G3 hunt for people that don't know, but it's highly oversubscribed. So last year there was 4,219 applicants for those 25 tags, right? So, but there was always a group application where it was whatever it was max point. The line item showed up between max points and one less than max, which to me tells me that it's two people applying.
One has max, one has behind.
So what happens is that guy with max points, he actually kind of had a statistical shot, but he almost took himself out of the draw because he was partnering up with his buddy. And my question was always, and they're gone now because it doesn't show up anymore. But my question was always, did your buddy lie to you and tell you that he has max points and you never verified it? And honestly, that literally was I started, and that started this whole thing where I really started diving deep into the California draw because I was fascinated because statistically he actually had a chance. And then he went to virtually nothing.
He was taking himself out of the
himself
equation.
out.
And people did that all the time on elk applications too. You would see that as well. And so it was just one of those things that just kind of bugged me. And I'm about myself. I've done this presentation with CDFW before for the R3H3 program. I used to be an accountant, so I just love looking at spreadsheets, which is really just kind of can be boring for a lot of people. But it's between spreadsheets, and then I have a poli-sci degree, so I'm just kind of a policy wonk too. So how does the hunting rules and regulations and draws, how do they manifest?
Yeah.
Right from the point of policy, whether it's at the state level, the commission level, wherever, into the draws. So that's kind of what got me going on this.
A mistake like that, one of the questions I had written down was what's the most common mistakes that you see when it comes to people's big game applications in California? Because I have an idea of what it probably is, but what do you see looking at the numbers?
I think there's for people with high point values and that have been doing this a while, I think the biggest mistake is pairing up and doing a group application. I think that's especially for those really high point holders, and they pull themselves down a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about what that means in California. If I have 8 points and you have 4, what does that do to us? Because some of the folks listening might not know what a group application is and what pairing up might do to their points.
Yeah. So for deer, up to 6 people can apply together. So they can, and they average your points. So in a simple application, you've got 8, I've got 4, we have 6 points, right? That averages out to 6.
Yeah, so I technically lose 2 and you gain 2.
You lose 2 and I gain 2. But, hunting's can be very much a group activity. I look at this with my friends. I think I'm 16, 17 points too. So I'm in no man's land, but I'm looking at from my group, And I convinced them over the last 4 or 5 years to start applying. I'm like, okay, well now where can we go as a group? I will carry you guys. I'll
You'll be
raise
the
you
sacrificial lamb.
I will, and it is, and part of it is because I'm in no man's land.
Yeah.
Like the only big tags kind of ahead of me that I have a potential to get to would be like X5B. You know, but there's not really much out there, and it's more. If you've got a hunting group and you've got your buddies and it's more fun to go together, that's more the experience than actually what theoretically a hunt might be, because you get to go on a particular hunt in a particular area.
Because everybody says this tag is the best.
Exactly. Yeah. But what is, you know, again,
what's it worth?
It's subject to, you know, people's biases, like what is the best. So I think the group application, you know, in some of those extreme, circumstances where somebody really kind of brings himself down. Other mistakes that I see is, I think too many people put in for point only.
Yeah, they don't give themselves a shot.
They don't give themselves a shot. And it's kind of staggering the amount of people so for example, look at the max point pool. There were in 2018, when 17 was the max, there was 142 people that had max points back in 2018.
Okay.
And were on the sidelines, right? They put in for point only.
Wow.
In 2023, there's still 102 left at the max point pool. So you only 40 people in 5 years in the max point pool have decided to come off the sidelines.
So at that rate, it takes 12 years for all those people to be gone.
Mm-hmm. And so part of that is that, and granted, some people may put in for point only 1 year and then they'll put in for an application the next. So it toggles, and we can't get it perfect breaking down of it. But I do think there's a lot of people, especially at the high point levels, that only put in for point only, and they don't give themselves a chance. And I think, is it a mistake? You can debate that, but I think some people end up just like starting to hold out for something that you just can't chase. You know, if you look at trying to think of a number here. So if you look at, and I kind of drew the line at 10 points, because there's a drastic fall off. If you look at the charts, you look at all the statistics, it's you know, from zero. You know, picture a graph that's, you know, 0 on the left hand side and max points all the way out to the right hand side. I mean, it's just down. I mean, it's just a down, pretty steep down graph. I mean, that carries out. But once you get to that 10-point level, it almost levels off. And so there's a lot of people that have 10 points or more that are just not moving. And what that breaks down to is, you know, just for example, of people who have 10 or more points, there's 5,556 people. Okay.
10 or more points.
10 or more points. So there's 5,000 people that are there.
Okay.
33% of those people apply for point only.
Wow.
Right. So there's 33 people, 33% of those numbers that have 10 are on the sidelines each year. Roughly.
Almost 2,000 people.
Yeah, almost 2,000 people. And then you have people that are applying for, so 21% of those people, again, this is that total pool of people with 10 points or more, 21% of them apply for G3. And I'll keep referring back to it because it paints this perfect picture of what it is. 21%, 1,100 of those people are applying for G3. Well, there's something like well over 100 people still in the max point pool applying for G3 for only 23
so
tags.
In a random
so
pool
it's just years and years and years and years that it'll take to work through that. Now, some of the tags will go for a little bit less than max.
Yeah.
So that does burn through a little bit of it, but I mean, 80%, let's see what my number was. It's 88 of the people with more than 10 points, 88% of them put in for 7 different tag opportunities, 7 different choices of the dozens that we have. So you can tell where these people are concentrated because they're trying to chase like that one tag. And and again, it's all subjective of what people want to do, but I think people are missing opportunities by trying to hang out for certain tags.
One of the things that I was thinking about before we started this podcast, when I knew you were going to be on as a guest, is there areas in California that, can be considered a quote unquote hidden gem. And I don't need you to name any zones or anything like that. But I think about states such as Wyoming, and, they may have 50, 60 hunt choices for, say, antelope. And you look at California, it's like, we don't have that many choices. So are we in a state that's stuck in where that 10 to 13 point, there is no good area to draw? And so those people are like, well, screw it, I'm just going to wait for the end. Like, what do you think the reason is for those people not drawing out in that, 10 to 15 point range and holding out for those tags?
I mean, I think a lot of it is, I'll say fantasy, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a massive state. I can't tell you what each zone is actually like on the ground, or what it's potentially like in those areas. But I do think a lot of that, I think a lot of people are trying to like chase like these trophy, best hunts in the world, or not in the world, but the best hunts in the state, because the most people do. Like, people see a line out, you're driving down the street, you see a line at a restaurant or a business or whatever. Like, what's going on there? I need to check that out, because there's a lot of people there. There's something good going on. I do think, just kind of the way, the human mind works. I think there's a little bit of that, or just shooting for that chance. Now, I'll say that any year that maybe I've drawn we were talking beforehand, right, of out-of-state tags, like maybe I drew an elk tag and I don't have much time to hunt California. My point-only code, so you can apply just for a point and not actually choose for a hunt. I've never actually done that. What I do is I will put in for the G3 or the G30.
I do the same exact thing.
Because I'd rather at least have a really good idea of what's going to happen. I mean, like a 99.9% chance of what's going to happen. But I'd rather have my name in the hat and get pulled. And like, that's a problem that I got to solve for. And that's a good problem to have. I've got a new hunt. I've got a hunt to going up that I really, maybe wasn't totally planned for, but here it is in mid-July or mid-June when we know our results. Like, I'm going to go figure this out as quick as I can.
I always tell people, it's like, you can't win if you don't play. Our buddy that we know that used to work for CWA just drew a tag in New Mexico, and he was like a 0.03% chance he would, but he drew. Yeah. I know people that have drawn the share hunts at 0.1%. Like,
I have a buddy that drew back-to-back years on share hunts.
Like, people draw those. Really? People draw those hunts.
Yeah.
And like you said, you take your name out of that hat by putting in those points only, you're not even going to have a chance.
Yeah.
So, what's that do?
So I do think there's a mix of people that are in. I definitely think there's a mix of people that are in those pools that kind of follow that philosophy. At least put your name in for the home run ball, and maybe it happens and you get lucky and you get to go and get to go experience it, and you don't have to wait for it. Some of these. I mean, like a G3, you can't actually wait for it. Statistically speaking, you won't ever get there. But maybe you get lucky. But at least give yourself that opportunity and like that fighting chance.
So talking about G3, one of the things that I was thinking about is, say you have a brand new hunter, somebody gets in adult onset hunter. Is it too late at this point with the way our point system is set up to start building points? Theoretically, quote unquote, too late. Like, what would you say to that person for their realistic chances of, ever drawing something or getting to the point where they're competitive for some of those tags? What's the fall off rate that you're seeing in your statistics?
I mean, you really see the numbers start to, they fall off pretty quick. So there's a lot of people that put in for, like they'll put in for the C-zone tag, right? Which is a premium draw. So they lose their points. So, I mean, you basically see at 0.0, and then to the 1 point level, it almost drops off by half.
Wow.
So it drops off really quick. So people are doing that. They're drawing those late season hunts that basically just take 0 points to get in and to try and draw them. And so C-zone and it's a G1.
Yeah, the late season.
The late season. A lot of people are seeking those opportunities. And so there is that big drop off. So on the whole, I think in California, especially for deer, there's tremendous opportunity. It's, I do think preference points are, they're kind of punitive. So it's like, I mean, I didn't live in California in 2002 when this started. Had I would have been on board. But I was finishing up school. I was born and raised in Washington. I moved to Connecticut for a few years to finish up school. came back to California, and then just getting myself situated in California, it took me a couple of years to actually start hunting again. Just because life was disrupted and moving. So, but with deer opportunities, there's a tremendous amount of hunts that are available from 0 to 3 to 4. Even up to 6. You can, by the time you get to like 6 points, you're almost looking at a majority of the hunts within California.
Yeah.
So deer wise,
yep.
On the whole, we do burn through most of them, right? I mean, there's those, like I said, there's 7 hunt choices where the people put in for plus 10. That's only 6 hunts.
Yeah, the majority you can get.
One's point only, but there's a lot of opportunity there sub 10 points, and so it really isn't too punitive.
Yeah.
You get into something that's called then, and as again, supply and demand, as the hunts become more desirable and or tag numbers go down, it might increase yourself a little bit. Like it might be up to 6 or 7 points, but there's tremendous opportunity out there at a much lower point level. And, hopefully people are taking advantage of it, because at the end of the day, hunting, would you try and hold out for something that takes 10 years or 12 years to build and it fizzles? Mm-hmm. It's, we had some great hunting tag in Wyoming 2 years ago. And we showed up in the middle of October, and it's 9,000 feet in elevation. And it was 75 degrees in the middle of October. And I would have never thought that it would be 75 degrees during the day in the middle of October at 9,000 feet in Wyoming. The hunt was a bust. When we saw elk tracks every day. We knew the elk were around, but, ran into a couple elk, in the dark driving back from our trailhead to camp. But they were entirely nocturnal. Mm-hmm. And so you think about that, like anything, there's so many variables that going into a hunt. I mean, to me, kind of what's better is, what if you got to go hunt 3 times in 10 years as opposed to hanging out for not hunting in 10 years?
Yeah.
And granted, you can still do the over the counter tag. So it's not, I mean, everybody's situation's a little bit different, but I'd always encourage people to look for opportunities to hunt and to hunt more frequently. And especially in zones that you can hunt more frequently, you're going to be a better hunter in those zones. And that's a big wild card. Because if you're not there frequently, and I mean, certainly hunting's a lot of luck. Absolutely. But if you can get out and you get a hunt it every other year, or every 2 or 3 years, and maybe you get up there for a bear hunt after the season, in between, like you're going to learn that area a lot better, and you're going to be more successful, and you're going to appreciate the hunt a lot more.
Yeah.
So,
I get the current rate with everyone having max points. When will all those folks burn their points? How many years away?
So what year does it drop to? Well, technically it'd be 22 this year.
Yeah, but like,
because you look at it,
you're always going to have people with max points.
Those people sitting there say you have 19 now. It's like, how many years around would I have to wait? Is it 40 years? Is it 10 years?
I mean, ultimately we'll never fully burn through the entire pool.
Yeah.
And part of that is, just the way people apply. That's just a component of that. I mean, last year the max point, there was 102 max point holders. So out of 283 max point holders in California last year, 102 of them were on the sidelines with point only. So they weren't even.
What would be such an interesting data point is if you could get the age of the max point holders.
Oh, I would love to get demographics on all of this, but the department they don't actually track them, and I can see there's good and bad in that, but I just like to understand how things work.
I mean, not to be morbid or anything, but you got 20 years. Say you start at 60, you don't have that many more years to go. What's the fall off from dying? What's the fall from? What's California? If you miss 1 year, how many?
5 years.
So 5 years, and then you lose your points. So that's not likely if you have max points.
Yeah. So it's one of those. It's one of those things. I mean, we know that the hunting population is aging, but we wouldn't know the age point or the age of the mix of max point holders. But you would assume that they'd probably been around for a long time, or maybe they're I'd say guys like me. I mean, I'm in my late 40s, right? But my son, my son turned 12 last year. He's 13 this year, so he can apply for big game tags. I mean, it could be there. So you could have a guy that's maybe in his 60s now. His son or daughter, could be in there too, and could be almost in the same boat if they started applying together. So those are the details you'll never get out of the numbers.
Yeah.
So we won't ever burn through the points. But like I said, I mean, there's still good opportunities for tags. Like I said, C zone's a great one. 7,300 tag or 8,000 tags in C zone, which is going to keep people from gaining. I'm gonna say gaining points, but they have to. Effectively, not getting a point.
Let's dive into that a little bit for folks that don't know about. I get the question a lot, or I see the question a lot on some of those forums or Facebook groups. If I put, or if I draw my second choice, do I lose my points? If I draw my first choice, do I lose my points? So what is it with California and the draw system?
So there's two ways to lose points. Number one, lose your points. Don't apply for 5 years. So that's number one. The other one is that if it's your first choice for a premium tag, right? And when we say premium in California, we mean at a premium, not premium quality, right? But it is. It's just that supply and demand. That if it's considered a premium tag, which means it's it's supply and demand, that the demand outstrips supply, you're going to lose your points. So, and again, there's those tags that effectively you can put in for 0 points and still draw, but they're still a premium tag because the demand ends up being so high on them. Like C zone, 8,000 tags available, but they all go. They all sell out.
Yeah.
As of the June 2nd draw date, effectively, everybody's put in for them, and they're entirely consumed.
Yeah.
And that's how the tag classifications go. In California, we have 3 classifications, which can be a little bit confusing. But
it does get confusing.
But there's premium classification, which means as of the June 2nd deadline, all those tags are fully allocated. I mean that they're fully subscribed. There's more people than there are tags. That keeps it a premium tag. The next level down is what's called
Isn't it unrestricted?
Restricted. Sorry, I was total brain fart there. Restricted tag, which means it sells out by I think it's August 2nd date.
Yeah.
Right. So if it sells out before then, it means it's restricted. So they try and throttle that a little bit. You can have 2 restricted tags in a given year, but you have to just be careful about how you buy them.
And the California will list those restricted tags in the Big Game Digest. They'll say which ones are restricted, which ones are premium, which ones are unrestricted.
Unrestricted. And unrestricted are kind of those over-the-counter tags we talked about, OTC. And that's literally it's usually in the first couple of pages. What's new this year?
Yeah.
Because of the date that a tag, a hunt sells out, can push it up or down. And so sometimes there's no demand, and a tag, D6 is a great example of this. D6 bounces between premium and unrestricted, and premium and unrestricted. And people are wondering why. Well, when it's unrestricted, everybody buys the tags and they end up selling out quickly. And then when it goes to premium, I'm not going to spend points on this. I'm going to get it as a second choice. And then so the demand not necessarily totally falls, but it's
doesn't fulfill the need.
Doesn't fulfill the need right away,
yep.
And people wait and they pick it up later, or they get it as a second choice. So that's back to that first choice premium tag. Has to be first choice, has to be premium. If it's not any of those, you will not lose your points.
Yeah.
But there's always some movements on a few tags. But we're pretty consistent overall year over year.
Yeah.
There's some archery tags that bounce a little bit, but you have to pay attention to that each year.
Yeah, something to keep aware of, especially like you said, say you're a D6 hunter, you move somewhere where you can hunt D6 and you're not paying attention, you get it and you still gain a point. And then you're like, oh, cool. And then you go the next year and you lose your points. And you're like, what happened? And you didn't see that it went from unrestricted to a premium tag, and you didn't pay attention to that little section right in the Big Game Digest of what's new this year.
Of what's new, and looking at the classifications. And again, you talk about like the errors. You'll always see in the hunts, most of them are pretty consistent. They take a certain, for the majority of, let's just call it the X zones because it's an easy example. most of the X zones take anywhere between 1 to 6 points. And you'll see people overspend. You're like, well, you'll see people, they'll spend, I think somebody spent like in D6 last year, somebody spent like 13 points or something, which they didn't need to at all. And so, you never know why people do that. Typo, error, not paying attention. If they have 13 points, it's not necessarily a group application because it's going to fall. The group applications get bundled. So you try and kind of like figure out like, why is it somebody's like, I'm done. We certainly hear the stories of people leaving California and hunters leaving California, but it could be that. But you just don't know. But there's always people that spend way more points than they needed to. And so you kind of wonder if like, well, you could have hunted this zone.
Yeah.
Like you could have hunted this zone 3 times in the amount of points that you had, but then you came in at 13, 14, 15 points and you only needed 5. Why'd you do that? And answers we'll never know, but that always just sparks my curiosity. I mean, I think, one of the interesting things in California, certainly we've seen hunting licenses as a whole decrease, but we also, on the broader scale, but even just like on my way up here, I was listening to your episode 5 with Mark and talking about advocacy and stuff. And when there was talk about consistency of buying duck stamps every year, there's not necessarily a ton of fall off with duck hunters. It's the same thing with deer hunters in California. We see over the last 4 years, I think we've seen like an average decrease in hunting license sales. And it gets really weird because COVID is involved there, and 2020 was a massive spike. And but we've seen numbers, typically, hunting license sales are falling about 4% a year, broadly speaking. Deer tag sales are only declining at 1%. So it's not necessarily, so there's the deer tag applicants and the people that are still hunting deer, those numbers are actually staying pretty consistent. Which is, so they're still in the game, right? They're not falling off as fast as other categories. Now, it's interesting to me to think that, when you see resident or, hunting license sales decrease at a faster number, but if duck stamp sales are staying the same and deer tag sales are seeing the same, like what's actually fallen off? Is it just the small game hunters or maybe people that just hunt upland? But most of my hunting buddies, we kind of hunt everything a little bit. So it's kind of weird to think of like, what's actually happening in those numbers. And we've seen, I mentioned it earlier, I don't think we had started recording yet, but we're seeing a little bit of an increase in non-residents buying deer tags and buying bear tags in California too.
Which like we were talking about, it makes sense. And we won't get very much into other states. That could be a whole nother podcast, but a lot of the true over-the-counter opportunities that other states used to have, such as Wyoming having over-the-counter antelope tags, aren't there anymore because the demand is so high and the tag numbers, depending on winter kill, this and that. We're one of the few states to have still true over-the-counter options for non-residents.
Yeah,
and it is crazy to, when you brought that up, to think that people are coming to California. Like I said, the opportunities there may not be the greatest opportunity. The quality might not be great, but there's opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of states, you have to draw bear tags, and we can go get one over the counter. You can kill a bear pretty easy if you know where to look.
Yeah. I mean, with the bear management program that just came out, I mean, I think everyone says they're shocked by the numbers, but I do think people were pretty surprised. I was pretty surprised to see at the numbers, but not only are the numbers so high, is that they've been stable for 10 years. And so there's definitely opportunity for bear hunters out there. I mean, certain parts of the state are going to be much better than others. But it's interesting to see and how it can kind of drive some interest within California. Because I used to hunt Montana over-the-counter elk for years, and now I'm back down to it's either an every other year or an every 2-year cycle just to get a general elk or deer tag in Montana, and so that's changed our planning and our strategy, and I'm seeing that elsewhere, and so if people really start looking and get over the fact that it's California, because I think there's some personal biases, right? I think people, I mean, I would hope so, that people would come look, because what's more fun than what I love about big game hunting, and I'm sure I am a waterfowler. I'm growing. We can talk about that in a bit. I've got a CWA project on a property coming up, which I'm pretty stoked about. So, but this is my next learning experience is waterfowl hunting. But I would hope that every hunt that I've ever been on, everywhere that I've gone, it's just been fun for me. It's just fun to go and to see a new place, and to the random people that you run into. Yeah. I mean, that's the best part of it, because it's like that human connection with others that just make the experience. And that'd be cool if we could see more people come to California. I'm sure a lot of people would complain about it, and too many people in the woods and this and that. But I do think that we are an opportunity state. Our draw system is structured for opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important for people to know, because a lot of people get frustrated with it. But our structure is structured for opportunity. Now, there are a few reserved tags and reserved hunt opportunities, but primarily we're structured as opportunity. Yeah. So that you can have a tag and you can go out and you can hunt every year. That's what that opportunity means, right? It's that you have the opportunity to go out with your friends, to go out with your family, to go out by yourself, however you want to do it. You have that opportunity. And I think it's important to try and take advantage of it where you can.
I think it's great, because speaking on the opportunity, a lot of those opportunity tags say it's A zone or B zone. They aren't, they don't have the highest deer density, or if they do have density, they don't have areas where you can see them easily. We can't hunt in the rut in those zones, A zone, B zone, that sort of thing. But it makes, at least my feeling, it makes me a better hunter. And when I go to other states and I hear people complain about, I can't find the deer, I can't see it, I seem to be finding the deer in the other states, because I've hunted in California so long. It's made me a better hunter, finding the few animals that are there. Yeah. You go to the other states where the animal density is a lot higher, and you're picking out animals that other people that have hunted there their whole life can't see, because they're not used to, having to really just find that one A-zone buck sitting under an oak tree. That's tiny.
That doesn't move. Yeah. It just sits there all day.
95 degrees. You're mentally
and you can't tell if you're looking at it, because you got the heat mirage coming out of your binoculars or your spotting scope, and you just not sure what you're looking at.
Like, I don't want to push it, but I think California produces really good big game hunters because of the opportunity we're afforded. It's hard hunting. There's no way about it. It's hard hunting, but we have the opportunity to do it every year. Mm-hmm. And it's great.
Yeah. And that's really why, that's why I enjoy digging into these numbers, and I want to encourage people to, put in for those hunts, but be realistic about your opportunities, and be realistic about what you want. Do you want to go hunting more, more frequently, or do you have an idea of, this one hunt that you're really hoping for, and you're willing to wait a few years for it?
Yeah.
My friend Randy Newberg has a saying. He's like, hunt when you can. You're going to run out of health before you run out of money. And he's dead right about
true.
It. It's like talking about, again, like, my dad turned 80. I'm sitting on Wyoming pronghorn points. I'd rather go hunting with him as opposed to wait a few more years. I mean, he's kind of a bionic man. He's got some artificial hips and stuff going on, but looking for those opportunities to go. And we are an opportunity state. And I do think if you really, really put in your time, if you have the time in California, I mean, our time's demanded everywhere, no matter, whether it's job and family, kids, sports, this and that. The time that you can take out to go and learn and just to try and be a better hunter. I mean, I think that'll afford you, if you do start looking at a state, you're gonna your skills are gonna grow if you consistently put on for it in California and you keep trying to work for it. I mean, it can be hard, but then you go to other states and it's just it's totally different. I mean, hunting in the Sierra here is wild. I mean, it's dense, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that we have largely some really really mature forests in on the west slope. There's not a lot of glassing opportunities. But that's kind of changed. We certainly had a lot of pine beetle implications that have killed off a lot of trees, and then certainly the fires. The X6A area by all accounts, everything that I'm hearing is that area is doing tremendous right now. We got lucky because we had a major fire come through, but we've also had a couple of really nice wet winters.
Yeah.
A couple of nice wet winters, and there's a lot of accounts that the habitat's doing great. Deer dependent upon early cereal forests or early successional forests, and so there's some good opportunities to get out and hunt and hopefully see some habitat improvement. I mean, it's not perfect with mega fires, but as long as a lot of them burn at a moderate to low intensity, there's hopefully we'll start to see some better deer hunting. We have a lot of other challenges, but that's one of the key components is just good habitat.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's, we have the California big game draws. There's also share tags that California offers, and those are mostly, I think they might have a deer hunt or two on there, but they're mostly elk hunts. Draw odds aren't great. I don't know if you have those numbers, but they're like less than 1% on most of them.
For most of them, it's 1% or less.
But, it's opportunity. CWA this next coming year will have at least 2 different deer hunts that will have opportunity-wise. And, we average 250 to 300 applicants. So if you look at it from that perspective compared to a premium deer zone tag, it's pretty good odds.
Yeah.
And everybody's on the same, we don't have a point system, so everybody's on the same playing field.
It's true.
So
that's I think that's an important thing is that people look beyond like the CDFW draws. There's other, I've been fortunate to hunt CWA properties through either Grizzly and just put in for the the draws and those hunt opportunities. There's big game opportunities. I know there's some pig and deer hunting opportunities. And then certainly the share hunts. I've drawn turkey for share. I've drawn a deer hunt through share. Don't have an elk tag, but again, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. But you especially look at up towards up the North Coast and all those Roosevelt hunts that they're putting out. I mean, there's beginning to be a lot of hunts. Hunt opportunities.
Yeah.
Victoria has put. I mean, I know she puts in a ton of work at CDFW to get those programs online, especially with those. I mean, it's all private property, so it's kind of a win-win situation, especially where you have smaller landowners or whatever that are still seeing tons of elk, but there's no opportunity to take them because it's the regular draw odds are so restricted.
Yeah.
So it creates a level of insurance for the landowners to be able to provide that opportunity too, because they're slightly protected. I mean, everybody worries about landowners won't let people hunt because they don't want somebody to get injured. Those share hunts take away or alleviate a lot of those restrictions. Yeah. So there's lots of places to look, and I always try and encourage people to look elsewhere. I don't want to list them all because there's a couple of secret ones that I've got on the. Not really, but they're out there. There's the more people look, and the more you start to look for them, you can figure out where those opportunities.
California's
are.
an opportunity state. There's no doubt about it. It's just you got to put in your time. You got to put in the effort, and hopefully you'll end up being rewarded for your effort, really.
Yeah.
But the opportunity's there.
Yeah, and what I think is really neat about those share hunts, we're instrumental in getting that program started, but it just provides so many more opportunities for like big game, especially when you can only put in one tag, right? But you can go put in for all those share hunts.
It's pretty remarkable. There's got to be 30, 40 tags by now.
Yeah.
Oh, just like the elk program alone is ballooned and gotten so big, it's like every year I go through and I look at all the hunts and like have to download the PDF of every one and like
the description
it's like,
of where it is.
But it's like and this is my level of geekery. Like I will pull them all down. I'll look at all of them and I build a spreadsheet of like here's the hunt, here's the what it's for. Is it a bull tag? Is it an antlerless tag? When are the dates? What can I apply? And then I have to look at what can I apply for? When are my windows that I could actually hunt? And climb through and figure out like what those opportunities are, because there are a ton of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, odds are kind of about the same, but I have to imagine with some of those bigger density hunts coming up with like 10 opportunities, that those odds are ultimately will start increasing, especially as more hunts show up, and less people are just there putting in. But a name in the hat is, it's cool to see that program's kind of been successful.
We see the same thing when we get more opportunities. Say we get a new property or a new landowner donates a hunt, our applications will get more spread out, and it's not as concentrated in one spot because there's not one tag. Now there's 10 tags. It's there's not one pit blind to apply for. There's 10, so people are going to spread their money out if they have a set X amount. So yeah, the more tags, the higher likelihood that the percentages are going to go up.
Yeah,
it's great for us that are applying.
And then there's this there's another random set of hunts through. There was a merger a couple of years ago, or it's still in process, where there was two different licensing systems. There was ALDS, which is the current, and then there was the other one that was broken out, and there was some select opportunities that you can go in and apply for. And I think as that becomes more uniform, that's all going to be an ALDS, that it'll people will start to see those hunting opportunities more and more.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate you coming out. Do you want to leave us with any hot tips for this year? We're going to get this podcast out before the draw, which is in like 2 weeks, so people will have this information. So anything you want to leave the folks with?
For me, it's always just encouraging people to spend some time, spend some time looking, and understand what your goals are. There's opportunities to hunt on a cycle for draw tags every year, every other year, every 3 years. Figure out what that looks like to you, and what your goal is. If you set that up, if you can plan and start to figure out what your program is. And again, the more you can hunt an area, the better hunter you're going to be in that area. In that area. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunity in California, is that almost all the state, the big numbers of tags, the big numbers of hunts are all done by the end of October. And time is precious. And if you have the time, even if it's just a weekend, or take a day trip if you can, especially in the Sacramento Valley. I mean, you guys are blessed here. Living in the Bay Area, for me to try and get to the Sierras, a minimum, 3 hours and 15 minutes with no traffic. But if you can carve out some time on a weekend, take your bear tag. Hopefully you have one. And go and hunt after the season's gone. After most of the people have vacated the woods, because everything starts to change there. Animals, we all know animals respond to pressure. Whether it's hunting birds, hunting birds or hunting big game, it's the same thing. If there's a ton of vehicles and a ton of traffic and a ton of people up in the Sierra, animals are going to respond differently. And I think as those woods, kind of quiet down a little bit, when October comes, temperature changes a little bit. The weather's awesome by then usually. Keep going and start to learn the area. Even if it's a D3 to 5 or a D6 or any of these over-the-counter zones, go up there when there's not as many people there and start to see when the deer come out. I've done a number of times where I've just gone up, and I always like to look for like a light dusting of snow. When one comes through the weather pattern, and get a couple of inches of snow. And if I've got time, I'll bail out at 4 a.m. I'll drive up and literally just drive roads, and not actively hunt. I mean, I might have a rifle sitting next to me in the truck as I'm driving around,
waiting to see your bear.
waiting to see the bear, but seeing tracks, right? Yep. And you'll definitely see more deer. There's been times I've been up and I just saw bucks galore. I'm like, and they're here.
Yep,
we all know they're here. You see them on the various Facebook like hunting groups or whatever. November comes around and all the pictures start showing up. Like they know when the season's over, and like, but it's true. There's some truth to that. Their behaviors change, and that can be really helpful to go and start to spot stuff. And then you overlay where you're seeing them with the topography. Like what's going on here? Are they on a singular ridge line that runs from 3,000 feet all the way up to 8,000 feet? You start to piece that together. You'll be a better hunter. so don't waste those opportunities. You've been sitting here, you've been applying, but applying is only one thing. Making sure that you're investing in time on the field I think is really critical to make the most out of it. I mean, we all want to be successful. It's way more fun to come home with deer meat or bear meat or whatever than not. And so, especially if you're waiting for those hunts, however long you're waiting for, spend that extra time to learn an area, and so you can come home and be successful. And then you're stoked you put in for that 3-point tag that, now you're going to hunt it every 3 years, and you're just learning and learning and learning.
Definitely.
You definitely have the opportunity to go up there. Everybody's life's a little bit different in timing and finances of, gas money or whatnot, but to the extent that you can, it'll make it a lot more rewarding as opposed to waiting until, it's the second week of August and, maybe the archery season opens in your zone. You're like, I have no idea where I'm going, right? You've waited too long. You've waited too long at that point. So, hunting's a year round effort for sure.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Jeff, do you have anything else?
No, man.
No?
Thanks for all the knowledge. Appreciate
Awesome,
it.
JR. We appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.